Hey YouTube, so August is upon us and we have hit that time when a lot of you guys are probably thinking about going back to school on campus. So I've been in university for about 5 years, and I've kind of gathered up a lot of tips and tricks which really help to make this period of the year a lot less stressful for me. So I thought that I would share some of those with you guys. And this video I'm going to be specifically talking about my tips and tricks for creating a schedule and surviving registration time. So let's get started. First off, my number one suggestion is to get yourself a notebook for registration. I like these little ones as opposed to the full size because this thing I can just slide it into my purse or into my day planner. I can keep it in my backpack for most of the term, and then all of the information that I need for my registration is going to be in here. Now, this is not the one that I used when I was registering, but I will kind of chat to you a little bit about how I set it up. First off, at the very front of your notebook, write down your degree requirements. If there are specific classes that you need to take, write those numbers down. If there's, then write down how many credits of specific areas. So if you need a certain amount of credits in math or science or English, know what you need, what specific categories you need to put things in, and then write down how many electives you need. I find that I go back to this page every single time I register for classes, and at the end of the term, what you're going to want to do is once you get your classes, or once you finish your classes and get your grades, write down what requirement they are filling. So if you need a certain amount of credits in English and then a certain amount of additional credits in language, you need to know whether that Shakespeare class you took is filling the language credit requirements or your English requirement. And then kind of going down, because you are going to find that some of your classes are going to fill multiple things and you need to figure out where they're going to fill. I think it's also a great place where if you have a requirement that requires a prereq, that you can write down so that you know what the schedule is. Now, I'm going to talk about the big picture in a minute, kind of planning out your schedule for multiple terms and actually until the end of your degree and how I do that. But really, what's the most important thing here is just writing everything down. Why do you need this class? Are there specific, if you find out information about specific professors from, say, a networking event, write those professors' names down. If you find out information about, if you take a specific class, you'll be qualified for a different minor. Write that information down. Just knowing what you need and knowing that you have all of those requirements written in your notebook really helps at registration, and it just makes it a lot smoother. It also helps me in the middle of the term when I need to refocus and be like, okay, this is actually going to get me a degree in the end, as opposed to just being random crap I'm doing and it's giving me a headache. Now, my next tip is specifically looking at this term. Visualize your schedule. Now, what I actually did was took the back of a dry erase board and I used large size Post-its. So I made, Monday to Friday, and then I would write on, for example, if orange was Sociology 232, I would write that on here, and I took it on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 o'clock until 12 o'clock. I would write that all on the Post-it. If there's a specific professor you're taking it with, if you need and then the registration number, because I couldn't register for classes based on what the class was. I needed a 5-digit number of just random digits that actually that meant that class. So I would write that on my Post-it. So I knew as I was looking up classes exactly how my schedule was going to fit together. It's also important that as you're looking at this, that you schedule your classes, schedule your tutorials and your labs, but also know where are you going. Do you need to do volunteering for some things? When are you going to put that? When are you going to eat meals? When are you going to study or go to the library or do research? Do you need to focus on where you're going to do errands and scheduling that into your schedule? Also, does your schedule make sense? Are you going to be able to if you're taking public transit, can you get home after your classes? Some of those night labs go until 11 o'clock. Are the buses still running? Not in my town. As well, making sure you schedule in enough sleep. So don't put a really early morning class after a late night lab. Now, my next tip is to, once you've got your schedule set up, find yourself alternatives. So know that if one of your classes is full, what class are you going to take instead? What classes do you have to take this semester? To the point that if all of your options if your option that you wanted to take was full, that you're going to switch into a different section, which might be at a different time or with a different professor, and is that worth it? And you're going to have to kind of figure that out for yourself depending on the situation. But having your backups and your alternatives already set up means that it really takes away that panic, because there is going to be a panic moment where you have your perfect schedule all set up, you've got your perfect 3-year plan, and then you go to register for first-year classes and your English class is full. Oh wait, I need that to graduate. I need that to take all of my other classes. Oops. So, know what you're going to do before you get to registration and before you sit down at a computer or fill out a form or go into an academic advisor. Know what you're going to do instead. Now, I think the next thing that I would really say is, as you're planning, is to definitely look at your big picture. Knowing what you're going to do specifically for this term, obviously, you might actually be able to register for classes, in the fall you might have to register for classes for spring semester as well, which we do at my university. But beyond that, beyond this main session, have an idea of what classes you might want to take going into the future as well. How are you going to finish your degree? There is actually nothing worse than getting to your last term, realizing you only need 3 classes, but that one of them is actually a prereq for another one, so you can't take them at the same time. That means that you're going to have to do a whole one term with 2 classes, and then a whole separate term just for 1 class because you didn't figure out how your classes were going to work together, or you kept putting off your requirements. Get to the end and actually be able to graduate. Now, as far as when you're looking at your notebook and what to write in here, I would really say, looking at classes, the professors matter. Now, some people would say that all first-year English classes are the same, and that might be the case for certain things. Some professors do teach it very similarly. But really, there is so much curriculum that you can do and so many different ways that you can even teach the same textbook and the same thought. And having an idea, or looking at reviews or talking to previous students and being like, what English classes did you take? Which professor did you take for first-year drama? And being able to chat through that is really good. Another thing that I would suggest, and I'll have a link down below, is ratemyprofessors.com. Now, this is something set up these are reviews from students. Now, it does have a little bit of controversy because, you know, it's got whether the professor was hot or not, or whether, like, certain things, like, about grades and whatever in the class. But, it does give it does at least prepare you for knowing, like, prepare you to go into the class and kind of know what to expect. Yeah. Now, my final tip, so I always have, you know, tons of pens, sticky notes, a notebook, and then something I would really say, pull out a day planner. Know all of the registration deadlines. Know when registration opens for your category, and book early. And by booking early, I don't mean, you know, in the first week or so. Like, in the first, if you can, book in the first hour. Know if registration opens at midnight, or if it opens at 10 a.m. If you need to go into your school to register, know when you can book, at what time you can book appointments. If you need to see an advisor, book your advisor appointment as early as you can. And knowing your registration deadline, so when you can drop classes by, or when you need to drop classes by, when your tuition's due, and all of your information about your, like, classes, and write that into your planner. You can usually find it on, like, your school schedule. Like, we'll have like the things that are relevant to the whole school, and knowing if your college works differently, some of the other ones have that information in your planner too. I think that it's really important that, like, after all of these tips, to say, obviously I'm not an expert in what classes you need to take. I can just kind of tell you what worked for me and what worked for the students around me and what worked for my siblings. But really, I don't know what degree you're taking. I don't know what school you go to. I don't know what electives you should take. I can tell you where I had fun, but that's not really going to help you much. All I can say is to just ask a lot of questions. See if you can find advisors within your school, because these are people whose jobs are to know what class, or to suggest what classes you should take. They can tell you, if they can look at your schedule or your big picture plan and tell you if that's going to mean you can graduate at the end of it. Whereas I really can't. Another thing that I would really suggest is to look in your college, or in your wider school, at mentor programs, or like Students for Students, or like Big Little situations. I know that, like, some residences and sororities and fraternities have these things built in, and some colleges do too. So knowing, like, who your mentor is and being able to actually ask them questions about your program is really going to help you out. At least of which, knowing you have to take this class with this professor because it's the only person who offers it, and it's awful. But you know that your big took it class too, so if you're stressed out about it, they're probably going to be willing to chat with you and maybe take a tequila shot. Now, only if you're of age. Don't drink illegally. I'm going to get in trouble for this. But anyways, so those have been my tips for kind of choosing your classes and navigating registration. If you have any questions about this or other subjects related to school, please leave them down below. I will respond to as many as I can. I'm also accepting video requests, so if you have any topics that you'd like to hear me talk about, do give me a shout. I hope that you guys are all having an excellent summer, and I wish you all an excellent semester. Now, I will see you guys all on the flip side.